Salutations, welcome to Loving the Language of Literacy. My name is Sophia Lee and so I'll be discussing Soundless by Richelle Mead. Before I get into the review itself, I just want to point out, if this video is so much shorter than usual, this is just a book review. If you haven't noticed on my channel, 99.9% of the videos I've posted are book talks, not book reviews. And the differentiation between the two is that with book talks there is a long non-spoilery section where I synopsize the book and tell you my general issues with it and then go into the spoilery in-depth discussion. But in terms of the words book review, this is just a completely 100% non-spoilery review where I just tell you my general thoughts, opinions, ideas, and if you should read this or not. And without further ado, let's get into the review. This book follows a teenage girl named Faye who is part of a mountaintop village where no one can hear and everyone communicates entirely through sign language as well as images and characters. Even though it is in a fantasy setting, it most definitely takes a lot of influences from Chinese folklore as well as the Chinese language because they mention characters a lot and not actual words and or letters. Faye is part of the artist class, and in the artist class it is the richest one and they have generally a bit more food and more care than the rest of the villagers. In this village you're either an artist and part of the peacock court or a miner who has to obviously mine for precious gems and rich metals from the earth. And what they do is that they send the metals down a zipline, and supposedly the village down below sends back up supplies and food because on the mountaintop they don't have access to fields that can grow their own food. The loss of their hearing has also been for hundreds of years. When the story begins, the villagers have already started to lose their sight. And without sight or hearing, you're basically Helen Keller, and no one has time to learn hand signs as well as everything else and like to feel on your lips and talk. The point is, they're in deep doo-doo. And around like the second or third chapter of the book, Faye regains her hearing all of a sudden. And because of this, she and her childhood best friend set off on an expedition down the mountainside that no one has climbed down in centuries. They're on a mission to discover exactly why the amount of food that's been going up the zipline has been decreasing, even though they've been sending the same amount of metals, as well as what the heck is going on, and maybe even discovering the truth as to why all the villagers have lost their hearing. Richelle Mead is Richelle Mead, and that means there has been a lot of pre-publication hype and buzz surrounding this novel. I know a lot of people have done book talks and book reviews on this, and I'm just one more to add to the pile because obviously she's written 12 very well recognized novels, all part of the Vampire Academy and then the spin-off series The Bloodlines, which are both 6 books following vampires. And this is very different from Richelle Mead, and she seems to be very accustomed as well as good at crafting general worlds as well as unique premises. However, the general consensus for basically everyone who's read this has been pretty much the same. It's a 3.45 average Goodreads rating. Everyone mentions that the premise is super interesting considering that in no other YA novel that I know of, the loss of a sense plays such a big role, as well as the fact that the length of it was not enough because she created this entire world, but she did not use enough pages to make up for everything that she set up in the whole story. In terms of my own backstory, I have always wanted to read something by Richelle Mead. She was one of the very first young adult paranormal authors I had ever heard about from my friend before I even knew what BookTube or the blogging community was. I was scrolling through Overdrive, I saw this was available to borrow as an audiobook, so I listened to it, I was done with it super quickly, and I do know that if I had been reading it as a physical copy, I probably would have DNF'd it, because overall I gave this book just a 60%, a 3 out of 5 stars. I most definitely have my problems with it, but it was an overall enjoyable read, although in the future, unless there's a super intriguing premise, I will not be reading Richelle Mead's books again. For me personally, the writing style, it's not beautiful, it's not intricate, it's very simple and to the point, and I was not attached to or could relate to any of the characters really well either. And the romance itself was pretty meh for me, so I just didn't feel anything particularly enticing that would make me want to read another one of her novels. My biggest complaint for Soundless, premise aside, was that it was such an average novel. It was definitely not slow in terms of what was happening because it actually couldn't have been to progress with the plot with such a short length. But at the same time, I could care less for the characters and their problems and the different conflicts and other people they did interact with throughout the story that were not part of the mountaintop village did not have any life. And really, I felt like I could have gotten the same emotional resonance if anything and pretty much everything in the novel had been replaced by something different. What I did really enjoy was the caste system. You were in the peacock court as an artist or an elder, or you were a miner sentenced to do back-breaking work for hours on end and have the entire village rely on you. Neither option seems really good. As with a lot of books heavily featuring / relying on Chinese culture, there was a very strong focus on obedience, duty, and respect for yourself and everyone in your family and everyone around you, because even though Faye had had the opportunity in the story to break away from everything else and completely start her own life with the person she was basically in love with, she did not make that choice and instead made the right decision. For me, the romance, it didn't cut it for me. It was pretty lifeless. It was cut and dry. I did not like her love interest, and I did not feel their story was very compelling, and just, I hope to heavens, and I know probably from just hearing other people's hype and excitement about the Vampire Academy and Bloodlines series that romance is a lot better, but again, one book ain't gonna cut it for me. The concept was absolutely brilliant, and I really would have liked to see what someone like Sarah J. Maas or Tamora Pierce or someone else who is known for their very descriptive, in-depth high fantasy novels could have done with it as well. And even though I'm not gonna spoil anything, I want to say for the ending, what the heck was that? Like, really, just what did I just listen to? Because yes, it tied in with Chinese folklore and technically made sense in terms of the entire story, but I felt it came completely out of the blue. There were warnings, there was foreshadowing, and there were lines and connections I could have drawn previously, but I just didn't, and it seemed very abrupt and sudden because of that. Overall, I just want to say that if you are a big fan of Richelle Mead, if you are very intrigued with the concept, I would say this book is definitely one to borrow from the library, because unless you're absolutely certain that you're going to love it, I wouldn't recommend investing the money to buy it, just because I personally did not feel invested in the characters, the plot, the romance, or anything else that was happening. But if you're very intrigued by the premise, I would definitely recommend just giving it a go, because it is very interesting, because I did love what Richelle Mead set out to do. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Keep calm, read on, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye. If you enjoyed this video and like to see more like it, give it a big thumbs up and leave me a comment below. If you'd like to do even more, hit the subscribe button. All my social media is my face at Soundless, and previous videos are below me.